Hello again and welcome back to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 84. My name's Annaschmidt and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. They truly don't. And today, we have a question from Amy. Well, we actually have two questions. Amy in the UK asks, do demons have souls? And can they go to heaven? And as usual, I have what could be seen as an alternative view or an unorthodox perspective on this topic, with a little sprinkling of added inside information from the dark entities. And yes, they do talk to me. And I'm going to share with you a rather eye-opening experience that I witnessed with a dark entity's soul energy and its transition. So question number 1 from Amy. Do dark beings have souls? And as you can imagine, this has long been a topic for heated debate. No pun intended. But I can talk from my experiences with these beings. The question of whether demons have souls is a challenging topic for spiritual people, religious people, and really everyone. But I'm going to just keep putting my perspective out there about these beings and all the different aspects that I learn about them. Now, a friend of mine with a deeply religious background got rather hot under the collar one day when this topic came up in conversation. She questions the nature of these entities as, are they worthy of salvation? So therefore, why would they have souls? And I don't really argue with people, so I didn't really give her an answer, and I don't see how those 2 points are really even connected. She was so flustered that she just simply couldn't even think straight. And I have to say that we no longer speak. She simply can't cope with me and what I do. I suppose, each to their own. We all have our own opinions on these topics and we all have our own ways of coping, especially with the unseen world around us. Now, people, this is a generalisation, they just want to hear that demons are supernatural tricksters that oppose God's divine will and they set out to harm us humans. But that's all about paranormal drama, and you all know my thoughts on that, so I'm not going to bang on about it. And back in episode 79, I shared my thoughts and experiences about dark entities as teachers. Now, you wouldn't normally put those two things together, but it actually does work. They have a job, and their work is to trigger our shadow selves and to help us to identify what is blocking us energetically and emotionally. Now, I know that's a rather unusual topic, but it's relevant. And I'm not going to get too sidetracked today talking about that. So if you want to have a listen, check out episode 79. Now, from an energetic perspective, I see that we all come from a point of origin. It's what we call mass consciousness. Some people call it creator or source or God energy. This is because every living entity, including the dark beings, have been born from this energy, from this source energy, the God energy that is comprised of billions of energetic particles, as I call them. And each of these particles has a consciousness. And this energy, through free will, chooses a path or an agreement for its existence. Beings who constantly go against their agreement become what I call encrusted with layer upon layer of this dense energy through their deeds, through their actions, and now have an existence in what we call darkness. But their soul energy, it's still present. It is still hidden within them. It's still dormant within them. In early 2000, I think it was 2017, 2018, I was shown a regeneration process for dark energy beings that I call grounding. And for all those spiritual people out there, it's not your typical grounding that we do as humans. Well, it's kind of similar, but it's not. And you'll hear what I mean when I talk about this story. I called my experience the grounding rod. Now, what do you do? Oh dear. What do you do with entities who exhibit challenging, demanding, and downright dangerous behaviours? I've dealt with a few of those in my time. I had no idea in the early days of doing the house clearing work, doing the energy work. I just didn't know what to do with these beings sometimes, until one particular clearing session where management, which is what I call the collective term for my spiritual support team, management showed me a new method using a tool called a grounding rod. Now, when I saw this rod, it had like a wooden staff-like appearance, and it stood around 1.5 metres tall. It was about 5 centimetres thick, and it had a large golden sphere positioned on top. Now, by human standards, it really just did look like a magical, glistening golden staff, all shiny and smooth like you would see in the movies. And I did wonder on what am I supposed to do with this thing? I don't always get an instruction booklet with the tools and the processes that management give to me. They'll give you a word or a visual, and then you have to kind of work out what to do with it. It's part of our learning, I suppose, part of our spiritual growth. Well, this was slightly different. I was given a little bit more information about this, and I'm going to share that now. Now, a particularly naughty and destructive energy being wouldn't cooperate one day. All his mates had left. I'd cleared the house. He just stood in front of me, defiant. It was like, nah, you've ruined my home. I've been there for 100 years. I don't like you. Some of them are rather rebellious. Now, I'd used all of my releasing techniques, everything I had in my toolkit, but still he just wouldn't go. He just stood there challenging me. And this being was radiating this really negative energy and trying to get into my energy field. And I call this psychic attack. Like he was sending these energy balls of nastiness, just trying to disrupt my energy and cause me problems. In one last attempt, I spoke to this being, as I do, very respectfully, very patient and very calm. And I gave him 2 options. Either he could transition into the afterlife and go to what we call the healing space, or he goes back out into the environment. Or option number 3 is that he just goes back to where he came from. And he didn't choose any of those. Like he was really annoyed, like really, really so annoyed he just couldn't let it go. These beings are so like people in many, many ways. Now, management must have had enough of this being's shenanigans because they're always watching. They won't step in and help as such. They won't do the work for us. They'll give us the tools and then they'll watch how we use them. But anyway, management was watching, and from above, I was looking at this being. Like I could see it in my in my third eye. I'm there and I'm having this visualization of this entity. And from above, I saw a brightly coloured golden rod with a big, sort of large golden ball on the top. Now, it appeared behind this entity. And look, I'm looking at it, trying not to look at the rod. I didn't want to give away the fact that something was coming. So I managed to contain myself, and this being was totally unaware of this golden object, as his entire focus and his psychic attack was directed on me. This golden rod silently lowered itself behind this dark entity, and as if magnetised, the rod instantly drew this dark energy to it, and it just immediately sunk into the ground. I sat there, oh dear, I sat there in my office chair, like I'm seeing what's going on. And my eyes and my mouth was wide open. I'm like, what just happened? I just couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. Management can be so stealthy sometimes when they need to be. And all I could see was this ball on the top of this golden rod sticking out of the earth. And I didn't know what else to do with that. I'm like, wow. It was like a wow moment. Management showed me through visualization that this dark energy being, it hadn't been harmed, but it was merely returned to the earth where it needed to be. And there this entity could go through the necessary transformation in a grounded way. Whatever it needed to do, whether it needed to release emotions, whether it needed to go through and release some trauma. While other dark entities, they generally choose to cross the threshold and go into the healing space, which we're going to talk about soon. And there they get to transition their negative energy in a spiritual way. But this particular being was just too dangerous to be allowed over the crossing point into the afterlife waiting room. So management came up with another method. I do love the way they work. This work never ceases to amaze me, and I just go with it. From then on, I was permitted to call on the golden rod when needed, but generally just in the extreme cases. And I'd witnessed some rather miraculous changes in some of the dark energy beings through its use. Now, during another clearing, I was going through a similar experience as I just mentioned, and this particular dark entity, another one that just wouldn't go. They just don't get it sometimes. And he had the same experience, but he only needed partial grounding. So what it did is it placed him into the earth sort of up to waist level. And as I watched, what I saw, I witnessed this sort of hard, crusty-like shell around this entity. It was starting to crack away and starting to fall to the ground. And as I'm watching, this glistening white sort of soul light energy flew straight out of this being's chest and off into the ether. It was absolutely fascinating. Yet again, I'm sitting there with my mouth wide open. Well, I said to myself, management can be very creative in the way that they solve the problems that they see that I come up with. And I do love sharing these experiences with you, and it is 100% true. I don't even think you could make up something like that. And it's stuck in my mind forever now. I don't technically use the grounding rod anymore. I just find that these beings are more understanding now of why they're moved out of people's homes, why they're moved out of people's energy fields. And I find that if I was to give you a percentage, maybe 20% now choose to transition into the afterlife, 40% choose to go back to where they came from, and the rest of them, they just want to stay in our earth environment because they love the emotions that we create. They love the energetic food. Now, back in episode 43, I covered the transition of the darkest of dark energy beings into the afterlife and what makes them seek change and how the process actually works. And no, they don't get a free ticket into mass consciousness. When people pass, when our soul energy leaves our body, if we don't stay in the earth reality, we do transition into mass consciousness. We get that ticket to go through. Most of us do. Some of us have some work to do, depending on what we've been up to in this lifetime. That is just the way it works. But if you want to have a listen to episode 43, I talk about all of the experiences that I've had with the welcoming committee and how it all works for them. If you like the content of this episode today, please think about leaving me a rating and a review. What reviews do is they let other people know your thoughts about my supernatural subject matter. People love reading reviews, and we're spreading the word about the real paranormal world around us. I would really appreciate it. Now let's get back to the episode. Now let's look at Amy's second question. Can dark entities go to heaven? I'm going to break this into two. So we've kind of covered most of that already. We're also going to look at why do dark beings resist crossing into the light, because there's lots of reasons why that is a problem for them. I'm going to answer that question with a no, and also a not quite. It isn't as simple as yes or no. Now, people understand that spirits go to the light or heaven. In the past, I've been asked, are they welcome into mass consciousness? Do they change their ways? And why would God want them? All energy beings, as we've already said, they have souls. Some of them have been more well-behaved than others. Some of them have had really steep learning curves. And we all come from that one mass consciousness, and we can return to that point of origin if we choose to. So for the dark entities, trust is really essential when working with these beings. They have to observe your behaviours, your authenticity, your ethical processes to be comfortable in letting you help them. I've been working with these beings for a very, very long time, and there's about 80% of them actually know how I work. They're quite comfortable with it. They know that they're not going to be harmed, and they're treated respectfully. But there are some that can often be rebellious and defiant and confused about change and their self-worth. Like seriously, these entities have self-worth issues. Now you wouldn't think about that. You just think about them as being dark and evil and malevolent. But they have emotions just like we do. But like I said, it's all sort of hidden within and under all that crusty surface. Now, these self-worth issues and their worry about change, this can hold them back from seeking a new level of existence. And these points bring up another question. Why do dark energy beings resist crossing to the light? Dark entities have an innate fear of retribution from the archangels. Now, this isn't all of them. Some of them understand how the angelic beings work, and some of them work alongside each other, like I talked about back in a previous episode. But there are those that just don't believe it. They're just like people. We all have different opinions, we all have different perspectives, and we all have different ways we go about our lives. Now, the archangels are archangel is generally one, maybe two, at the threshold when we cross over into the afterlife. Now, because of past experiences, like I said, some of these dark entities instinctively expect payback. They expect judgment. And as I'm saying this little thought came into my mind, this little mini story. I was doing another clearing for a home one day, and again I had 2 or 3 entities that they just didn't know where to go. They were kind of like, nah, I'm sick of being here. I don't want to be here anymore. And I don't want to go back to the dark realm. I just don't want to do it. And as I'm trying to assist them to transition over the threshold into the healing space, it was like, no, we're not going. I could feel the resistance. And in my head, I heard this very gravelly voice that said, punishment. They thought they were going to be punished. And when I realised, I went, no. There is no punishment, no judgment, no retaliation. If you are choosing through your own free will to improve your energy, to work on yourself, and you want change, you're welcomed. And they don't go into mass consciousness. They have to go to the healing space. Now, in the healing space, it is a place in the afterlife waiting room that I discussed back in episode 43, where dark energies can go to work on healing their wounded souls, raising their vibrations, and shifting the darkness around them. They no longer need it. They're no longer in that negative state, thinking those negative thoughts, doing the negative actions, and they start to remember who they were before the darkness overcame them. And believe it or not, they can be quite excited about their futures. I know that sounds odd. I have seen these entities, and some of these beings, once they're actually in the healing space, they're still resisting. They're still fearful of injustice. They're still fearful of some sort of retribution towards themselves. But the spiritual supporters in the healing space, they really do encourage them to just embrace their fears, just like we have to do it. So I hope you found this interesting today. It's an unusual perspective, I know. I just keep putting it out there. But I just want to plant the seed in people's minds that there are other perspectives. There are other ways to look at these entities and to observe them. And through my work as an energy clearer, I've seen many, like in the hundreds, like in the thousands, have transitioned. These beings have transitioned into this healing space. A lot lots of food for thought there today, and I hope that I've planted the seed for you to think about these beings in another way, to have a broader perspective about them. So in episode 85, we have what I'm calling Demon Q&A. I have lots of your questions. People send me questions about demonic beings all the time. Some of them are sensible, and I will say that some of them are not so sensible, but I'm going to answer them all. And we'll be looking at questions like, is it possible to be possessed by a good ghost or a demon that will actually help you with stuff? How do you make a deal with a demon without selling your soul? How do you become a demon? What do demons actually do all day? Do they have a job? And is there a power hierarchy amongst demons? So stay tuned for next week's Too Hot to Handle episode. So thank you for joining me today. And don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.